as we have the choir often on the session of question, it will be now. Please, Professor Schneider and Adriana, stay here for those who would like to. Just a question for me, because I saw that it's a specific phenomenon in North Moldavia to have the church painted inside and outside. Could you explain just in a few words what is the reason, why this specific phenomenon? Because it's, I am not a big connoisseur, but I would like to hear something about this. Why, if you know, sure.
The program of the frescoes on the outer walls of the church is a very well determined. It's a very well determined program. I think there is the hand of the Archbishop, the Bishop of Moldavia at that time, Grigorier Roșca, and although some specialists see this painting on the outside, the extension of the theme from the pronouns out on the outside wall, other specialists say that is a propaganda against the Reformation that started during Crară's reign. So,
thank you. I have another one for Professor Schneider, because he talked about the relationship between and how the things, the mind of someone reflecting the surroundings in the object. Could you say us a little bit more about what you believed about this, or you think about this? Because it was one of my reflections at a certain time. I said, don't ask the people what they are, what they think. Just look around them, and things around them will talk about them. And just tell some words, a few words about it.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that out of both sides of my mouth at the same time. On the one hand, when you're dealing with late antiquity, you simply have to presume, no matter what the genre of verbal text, that you're dealing with rhetoric. Right? That's even contracts are written with rhetoric. And therefore, before one could make any kind of judgment about people's intentions or even what's happening in history, and certainly the details of what's happening in history, one has to penetrate that rhetoric. Now, the trouble is that on the other hand, the remains of material culture are actually equally rhetorical. When Constantine builds a huge church at Old St. Peter's, and a much smaller basilica for the bishop, he's certainly making some kind of rhetorical statement, because the church at Old St. Peter's is his personal charity, his donation. People will think of it as his church. The Lateran Basilica is going to be the bishop's church, that's for sure. Nevertheless, there is what we might call a certain practical materiality about investing in stuff that I think can be taken to represent some kind of serious commitment. The real analogy today would be, I think, people buying a house. What kind of house they buy, how much repair they do on it, that kind of thing. It's a real life decision, but it's still kind of rhetorical. And then the other thing you have to take into consideration is, of course, genre. If one is going to put verbal texts and material things together, and one is interested in issues of, say, policy, then probably appeal to legal texts makes more sense than appeal to something like Eusebius. So it's all interpretation.
Anybody want to?
Might you interface what you just were speaking about regarding the model of left hand and right hand, and how that relates to the presentation you heard earlier question in mind. Did Constantine think of himself as establishing a dominant church? Did he think of himself as establishing some kind of a pluralist relationship to the church, and that would be a good thing? Or was it establishment, or what was it that he thought he was doing? And then what is it that the Orthodox Christian in general thinks that he did? And then what might be the sensible thing to do? Can you comment on something that's related?
Right. Short answer, right? Once again, I think I'd have to separate the answer into Constantine as private person from Constantine, the new sole emperor. As I argued in the paper, the sole emperor is the one who's practicing the right hand, left hand diplomacy, and that's because his goal as emperor is peace. It's an old traditional Roman goal, right? Pax Romana is essentially the foundation of the empire, right? So he's got to rule everybody. Privately speaking, there's enough in the rhetoric of his letters to suggest that he really did think that the Christian God was a God of great power, and he wanted to be nice to it. He wanted the Christian God, to favor him, to look on him with favor, to remember him. And in that sense, I think privately, he was committed to Christianity, but he did not commit the state to Christianity. And if we were going to talk, I didn't want to take more time during the talk, but another one of Constantine's legacies, I may have emphasized the negative legacies a little too much, is not just the cross, it's toleration. And if there's an analogy between what I was saying and Professor Turcescu's paper, it's that the Constantinian Empire looks a whole lot more like the situation in North America than it does like any kind of established church or Christian empire. As you heard Professor Dr. Wagshall say, legally speaking, Christianity was not an established church until the end of the 4th century with Theodosius. So I don't think an established church was Constantine's policy. I think it was everybody in the empire should have the benefits of religion. That's what the texts say, certainly. You know, however they see fit. The emphasis is always on individual choice, however they see fit. This is, obviously, you asked about how the Orthodox feel about this, and clearly the Orthodox have gone whole hog for the Eusebian Constantine, because he fits the model of an established church. Not just an established church, but a triumphalist church. You know, the only church, the church that, together with the state, frames the laws. So, something we didn't hear from Dr. Wagshall, and I sure hope we do someday, is a paper on the civil law, and how much the civil law grows out of influence of the church. Probably just the Justinianic text would be the best for this.